Hello everyone, welcome to the Royal Society of Edinburgh to yet another talk in the RSE Investigates series. We're really happy to see so many people here tonight. And I'm really delighted that we've got not one, but three writers here with us tonight, and I'll be introducing them in a bit. I'm Jennifer Smith, and I'm Professor of Sociolinguistics at the University of Glasgow, and with a specialism in Scots, hence my presence here tonight in hosting the speakers. Now, I've got a couple of housekeeping before we get started on the main deal for the night. There's a couple of housekeeping, and I'm looking at Talia to make sure I get these right. We don't plan to have a fire tonight. You'll be very glad to hear that, especially if you're from Glasgow. But if there is an alarm, the staff here will guide you to the exits to go out. And there's also a couple of rooms available if you want a break from this during the event. There's the Scott room, which is a prayer room, and the James Clerk Maxwell room, which is a quiet room, if you've had enough of all of our voices. And I have to remind people that there'll be photography taking place during the event. If you don't want to be photographed, please let a member of the RSE team know, okay? And so we'll have, I'll give a little introduction. We'll then turn to the writers for tonight, and then there'll be a good 30 minutes at the end for Q&A. And can we ask as well, folks, that in the Q&A, you get one question, because there's normally quite a few questions, so if we stick to one question, give back that mic, is what I'm saying. And I think that was all the housekeeping, Talia. Yeah, I've got another couple of double thumbs up from Talia. So tonight I'm really delighted to welcome Len Pennie, Chris McQueer, and Michael Pedersen. We'll be having some chats with them on the writing, and particularly with a Scots angle. But I thought to situate what we're going to be doing tonight, to situate that first of all, we should talk about what is Scots. If we're going to be talking about it here in writing, we want to talk a little bit about what is Scots. And I've written down some notes for myself. Normally I just talk, but what I'm going to attempt to do is give you the history of Scots from around the 13th century to the 21st century in about a minute and a half, right? So I need to have my notes here. So if we go way, way back, folks, to the 13th century, around about that time, in Scotland, it was mostly Gaelic speaking, right? And then you get this variety arising from Northumbrian in northeast England. Northumbrian, you get a variety coming out of there and moving up into Scotland, a variety of which was originally English, moving up into Scotland. And over the next few centuries, you get that moving up the East Coast. And in that move up the East Coast, and the longer it was in Scotland, you get divergence from that original English. So you get Scots moving further and further away, and coming up with a number of its own particular norms of use. There's divergence and divergence. Scots language starting to make its own rules of use, quite different from English. And then it's going that way, it's diverging. And then what you get is a series of political and religious events. And I'll name one of those, and that is Union of the Crowns. Okay, 1606, Union of the Crowns. And with those religious and political events, what you get is a stopping of Scots, at least in writing. I'll get back to that. So then you get a pooling of Scots in writing back again towards more English norms. So there's a dissipation. And what you find then is, it used to be, say if you look at the 14th, 15th, 16th centuries, Scots would be used in law, in education, in all spheres of life, in all domains of life. But with these particular political and religious events, the domains then became shrunk to certain domains of use only. And one of those domains of use is spoken Scots. So this idea that Scots has disappeared is simply not true, right? Step out in the streets of Aberdeen and Glasgow and you will hear Scots spoken. And what we've got in the present day in Scots is what we call the Scots linguistic continuum. So at one end of that continuum, you've got Scottish Standard English. And that's generally described as Scots with an English with an overlay of Scots phonology. So if you think of someone like David Tennant, David Tennant isn't saying, gonna nae day that, but you can tell from listening to his voice that he's Scots. There are things he's doing in his language that are Scots. So that's the Scottish Standard end, generally thought to be English syntactic structures, English words, but with an overlay of Scots phonology, as we call it in linguistics. And then at the other end of that continuum, we've got what you call broad Scots. And that is differences across the words you use, ken for no, I for yes, differences across the phonology, coo for cow, and differences across syntactic structure as well. And there's loads of interesting things with syntactic structure in Scots. So if you say, we'll do a bit of audience participation here, if you say, my hair needs, thank you, and I realise my hair doesn't really need washed, so I might have thrown you there. My hair needs washed. Whereas in standard English, it would be, my hair needs washing or needs to be washed, yeah. So we've got tons and tons of syntactic things, the structure of Scots that we're using all the time as well. And we simply don't know, by the way, that we're using those. And within that continuum as well, we've got something else going on. And that is when people can walk up and down that continuum of use. So now, folks, I'm using with you now my RSE voice, right? This is my posh voice. But when I go home, for I was brought up, I didn't speak like that, I spoke like this, you know what I mean? So that is me shifting way down from Scottish Standard English, way down to the broad Scots side of the continuum. So we have this linguistic continuum in present day, and what that gives you, if we turn back to writing, is a whole load of fluidity in what you can do with Scots, right? So you can have in your Scots writing something that's quite at the Scottish Standard English end of the continuum, right down to the broad Scots of the end of the continuum. And we're absolutely seeing that now in 21st century Scots, the whole continuum of use. And also the other thing we need to take account of as well, that at the Scottish Standard English end, it's quite homogenous, so you can't really tell where David Tennant's from, because somebody speaking Scottish Standard English in Aberdeen and Glasgow and Edinburgh all sound quite similar. But at the broad Scots end of the continuum, you've got another dimension, and that's a geographic dimension. So my Scots, up for Buckie, by the way, in case you want to know. Buckie in North East Scotland sounds awful different to the way that Chris would speak here in Glasgow, right? So it's within that context of use that we'll have some discussions tonight of the types of writing you're seeing in Scots more broadly at the moment. And by the way, we're going through an absolute vernacular renaissance in Scots at the moment. That kind of waxes and wanes through time. Sometimes you don't get much Scots writing at all, and then it comes up again in a peak, and we are at an absolute peak at the moment, as we'll see with the three writers tonight. So, let's do it. Oh, don't have to clap.
that, just for a brownie point. Or
Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much.
Trying to endear myself to you.
Yeah, you'll get a job with Graham Norton. You know, the clapper at the beginning saying, "Clap now, be quiet, don't laugh. It wasn't supposed to be funny." So we'll start with Len Penny, and I'm sure most of you know Len. From at last count, I did a quick count on your social media, and it was over a gazillion. And of course, very much known for Scots Word of the Day and your 2 volumes of poems. As we can never say poems now, we have to say poems.
That's why I did
it. So Len, I wanted to ask about, when you look at your poems, you'll see that some of them, and talking about that continuum, some of them at the more standard end and others really at the Broad Scots end. How do you come to that decision to...
Just whatever rhymes. It depends, because there's sometimes where I set out to do it intentionally and sometimes where I don't, and there'll be some pieces where it's all in English and then I'll just throw in a wee Scots word just to trip people up. But it's interesting because people often think it's about accessibility. You know, if I want to make something more widely understood, do I make it all in English? And I don't do that, because for me, accessibility isn't just homogenising it and putting it in English and making it fit for a monolingual Anglo-centric audience. Because when people say, oh, nobody's going to read it if it's in Scots, I'll read it, my mum will read it, my family will read it, my friends will read it. So I think it's about shifting who your audience is when you're thinking about accessibility, because there's a dictionary there. Do you know what I mean? You can learn it if you want. And when I was studying Spanish, it was all in Spanish. Which was quite inaccessible to me, and so I don't put a glossary at the end. I don't break it down. I don't make the Scots words othered in that way, and I also don't italicise things when they're a different language, because I want to keep it all, you know, equally on the same playing field as it was when I was growing up. And you're absolutely right about that continuum, because sometimes you'll code switch in and out of different languages depending on who you're talking to or who you're writing about or to. So it really just it's what happens on the day.
Great. And are there some themes, do you think, that suit more Scots, if you see what I mean, or...?
So a lot of my work is about domestic abuse, a lot of it's in mental illness, and, you know, one of my pieces, Civil War, was studied in the classroom. Civil Wars in Scots, it's about abuse. And the Waynes wrote essays on it, and I'm nosy. I'm so nosy. So I was like, right, go to send me some of the essays. And one of the Waynes had written, the poet's use of the Scots language is done intentionally to evoke that abusiveness, that roughness, that masculinity, that aggression. I was like, hold on, right. Can I get a class visit? Because you know they say there's no right or wrong way to analyse poetry. There is when it's mine. So I had this Wayne, right? No, I went, and I was nice about it, and I said, right, what are your preconceived notions of Scots? How do you feel about the Scots language? And the same things were coming up: aggression, masculinity, roughness, uneducated, all that sort of stuff. I tell you, by the end of that lesson, they were anything that. No, they probably were, but they were just like, we need this woman to shut up and stop. I went and did, because Scots was a language I was mothered in. Do you know what I mean? It's a mothering language, it's a loving language, it's a soft language, it's a feminine language, it's a language just as much of how I feel as how anyone else feels. And so I wanted to fully show the full spectrum of human emotion within how I approach Scots. Because there's been times where I've written eulogies and people have said, oh, we don't need that Scots shtick at a sad time. I think that's awful. So when it's, you know, you're grieving, I do that in Scots. A lot of my stuff about grief's in Scots because it's grieving my family who spoke it, or it's about, you know, how I feel, reconnect with myself. I'll put that in Scots. But yeah, I really push back on the notion that Scots should be relegated to the comedic, because I think too often it's that we're laughing at people who speak Scots and they're the butt of the joke, and not enough that they're just funny and they happen to speak Scots. So when people say, oh, you use a lot of humour in your work, I do, in both languages. Yeah. I'm funny in both.
And I think what you're describing there is absolutely this thing of Scots over the centuries pushed out of certain domains. So then you see it even now in TV and film. You're either a comedian or a gangster.
That's it.
If you've got a broad Scots
What we cannot
voice.
understand, we laugh at. And I push back at that, because whenever there's someone who's speaking Scots and they're the butt of the joke, I don't get the joke. because I wouldn't laugh at that person unless they're making a joke. I don't think we make a joke out of people. I don't think that's appropriate. I think that's punching down.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that, because that's certainly been the case for, well, centuries really now, but I'm seeing a bit of a change in terms of the, you know, a comedian or a gangster. But if you think about a couple of years ago, Vigil, and it was all mostly Scots voices, and they were just the guy working in the submarine, and so that may be changing, but it's slow, the change.
Yeah, and you can
sure.
see it. I mean, there's a video game that came out called Still Wakes the Deep. It's set on an oil rig, and there's a lot of Scots in the game. And when you're playing it, it's the first time I've been playing a video game and gone, hold on, this is just characters being normal.
That's right, yeah.
And I want to see that with the sort of normalisation of like good people and bad people, not like the villain or the hero. Maybe they're both Scottish and it's not like a wee token character.
Absolutely.
And maybe they just speak Scots because that's how they speak.
Absolutely, yeah, great. And I wanted to ask as well, in your poems that are mostly in Scots, what makes you decide, because we have this fluidity in Scots, what makes you decide what type of Scots you will use in those, if you see what I mean?
I do a little bit of linguistic magpiery, I will admit to that, because a lot of people think that the Scots that you speak has to be Scots that you learnt at your nanny's knee. And I push back on that because we wouldn't have that in English. You know, you see a word from a different place and oh, that's nice, I'll start using it. So I will find words that are just beautiful and gorgeous, maybe haven't been used for a couple of years, maybe haven't been used where I'm from, Lanarkshire, and I'll just go, oh, yoink, that's coming home with me. And so I do like that because a lot of people, some of the words they know they learnt from poetry. You know, they'll have studied Burns and like words like tapsultiri that maybe you don't see as much. And so I want to do that again. I want to have words where maybe the only time you see it is in a poem, but if you see it in context, you look it up, you like it, maybe you use it. And that's the Scots word of the day. It's not just words I know or I grew up using, you know, because I'm not from the 1800s, but thank you. See if that doesn't get a laugh, I'm going to be like, right, I'm going to work on my skincare. But yeah, so I do words that I don't know, and because, you know, I'm not forcing anybody to use them. I'd like it if they do, and if you do like the words that I cover, feel free to use it, because that can only be a good thing. But I think there's something to be said for looking back in time and thinking, wow, we did have a specific word for this. How not use it?
Uh-huh. And I'm glad you brought up the Scots word of the day, because that was one of my questions. Like, how do you find the words? So do you come across them, or do you?
It's a dictionary of the Scots language. So it's dsl.ac.uk. It's great. That's my. It's not even like my most visited website. It's when I hit Google, it auto-completes because it's like, I know what you want. I know what you're looking for. So I look on there and it's great because it's got the history of the usage. It puts it in context. It gives you wee snippets. It's a great way to win arguments online. People will say, oh, we never said Ken in Glasgow, and I'll be like, actually, did you know? So yeah, it's did you Ken? So it's great, stuff like that, that's where I go, but it's also amazing because I'll have a day where there's been a particular thing happened, like yesterday, dirty water for the bus window went in my eye, and I was like, I bet there's a word for a little drop of water. So I went on, and there is, and it's things like that where I'll just find a contextual word that feels appropriate for the day, and then sometimes it's aimed at people as well. If I ever cover an insult, there's been an altercation. So yeah, it's fun, it's great, and I think we're on, 2078 now, so.
Wow.
Yeah, I haven't missed a day either, so there's something diagnosable there.
That's impressive, that's impressive.
And I can tell you, if you're wanting like a stable, well-adjusted, well-regulated life, don't do a daily anything. Because it's great. The dinner will be on the table getting called, and I'll be like, no, sorry, I think you'll find it's work time. So yeah, it's been great. If there's ever not a Scots word of the day, someone needs to be called because something's gone wrong.
And I've seen actual complaints like, where are you? Why is there not a Scots word of the day?
Yes,
yeah,
and people build their whole routine around it. So it's great. It doesn't put too much pressure on me at all. It's great, but the thing is, I've been in hospital, I've been bereaved, and I've like done the Scots word of the day. I've been openly weeping in the Scots word of the day. Most days I don't even do it like out of bed. I'm just in bed like, hi guys, how's it going? So it's great, it's amazing. It's been a nice wee way to check in with myself. It's like a diary as well, because when I look back at the first Scots word of the day, I'm like, hello, the Scots word of the day today is Fusty. I know, I wish it was something more grandiose. It was Fusty. And I was so shy and anxious and like buttoned up, and like I was anglicising my voice. And now when I do the Scots word of the day, I'm much more relaxed. So it's been nice to sort of ease into it.
Right, and that's interesting as well, the relaxation of your voice as you describe it, because you definitely see, I think it's partly social media as well, where we're hearing lots more Scots voices now and people being more confident to use those Scots voices, because we simply we weren't exposed to them before, right?
It's great. It's a kind of democratisation of media in general, because people use the way that they speak and they'll just be natural and normal, and they'll have the wee micro community where people are from the same place or they're learning something new. I think it's a great way to make language in general accessible, because if you're learning a language, you can just look up, German makeup tutorial and find out how to say, I don't know, concealer in German. It's a great way to just learn and meet people where they are in a casual way when it comes to language.
Definitely, yeah, most definitely. By the way, folks, please pitch in if you want to at any point. We don't have to do a strict.
I'm enjoying the show.
Okay, great, okay. Let's just carry on, Len. Let's just carry on. And can I ask a little bit more as well about the poems in Scots? Do you have, beyond the words, or you're like, I'd like to use that word, do you sometimes use like an older style? Because what goes on in speech, we can't really go back to that older style, right? But in writing, you have that double flexibility in a way.
You can't really go about whapping about ilka for every time you want to say every in modern parlance, but I do, because they have the same number of syllables. So when I was going through and editing the second collection, I was putting more Scots words in when they had the same number of syllables, because I felt more confident. And you can actually see, like, my first draft of I'm No Having Children, which was the first piece I put online, it started off a lot more English in it, and then slowly as I became more confident and thinking, right, I'm not even going to say nobody's going to make fun of me. People are going to make fun of me and I'm going to be okay with it. It became more and more confidence and more Scots, and I think that's bled into not just the way that I approach language, but I can see it in my family as well. They're saying, oh, we use more Scots because you have in your videos and things like that. So I think a lot of it's a confidence thing with people, with Scots speakers. They feel almost like they need permission, which I'm not going to get into because I'm not in a position of authority, but what I would say is you should feel as if the language belongs to you just as much as anybody else, because often people think, and I've yet to meet a Scots speaker who doesn't show me this side of them, where they think, oh, am I doing it right? Am I saying the right thing? This doesn't meet some imagined standard of Scots. Whereas I think we all feel like that, and we're all thinking that we're needing to catch up to, I don't know, Burns maybe, someone we're chasing. He's not running very fast at the minute. But but yeah, it's this imagined standard, and I think it's because the best examples of written Scots, I don't know if you feel the same, but tend to be from people who spoke in a way that we don't, use words that we don't, and instead of looking at it and going, oh, that's just Shakespeare, I might not speak like Shakespeare, but I still speak English, we're going, oh, I don't speak like Burns, I don't speak like, well, all these different authors, I don't do it right, I need to catch up with them. And so it's been a big sort of long journey for me, learning how I spell things myself, learning my own orthography, learning how I say things, how I would say it, how I could say it, how I should say it, and getting away from that idea of this is the right way to do it and I'm just failing at that.
Definitely, yeah. And I think because, of course, there's no written standard in Scots. So
Thank
in a way,
God.
Right,
you
so
imagine.
again, you've got the flexibility, yeah. But that's interesting as well. What you're beginning to see, especially in social media and stuff, is a ground up set of rules coming. Nobody has said, do you spell canny C-A-N-N-Y or C-A-N-N-A-E? No one says, right?
Oh, they will.
It must
No
be
matter
like
how
that.
you spell something, somebody's dad will always be along to tell you you're wrong.
Very true. But what you're certainly seeing in social media, etc., thank you so much. What you're seeing in social media is almost like an organic formation of those things. So I think canny in that example is one out that ending in Y rather than the I-E.
See,
so that's
I-A-E, but some people say canna.
right.
And I think people are a lot more accepting with Scots that there are variations, and I think it should stay that way, because when it comes to linguistic pedantry within English, it's stifling. It ruins it for you because there's rules, and you have to sort of sit down and let people know that there's rules, but we did make them up.
Yeah, exactly.
The whole language is, and also it's almost sort of back formed the way I approach English now, because it's a lot more play in Scots because there can be, and so the way I approach English now is I'll verb a noun, I'll noun a verb, I'll change parts of speech, because I think poetry allows for play, and Scots allows for play in a way that perhaps other forms of writing in other languages don't, which I enjoy. I like it because play is where creativity comes from. It's where innovation comes from, and it's also where fun comes from. So it's a lot more fun for me to write in Scots sometimes.
Definitely, that flexibility is a bonus, for sure. Len, do you want to...
No.
You can all leave now. This is not how we played it out. Come on. Would you like to treat us to some reading?
So I wrote a piece called Bilingualism, and you know they say you reap what you sow. See, when I was sowing this, I was like, this is going to be great. Reaping it? No. Because it's line and line about as Scots and English, which sounds like it'll be all right, but you forget that you're in two different sort of modes. So we'll see how this goes. Two distinct entities dance in my brain. They things we all ken fae we're telt as a ween. Exploring hybridity, switching with speed. Fankle up in my gub, they twa halves a lead. A linguistic dichotomy, fights to get through. Bringin run ilka in my head like a grew. Possessing my tongue, and emerging unbidden. I cannae unfankle this mochit wee midden. Inextricably linked, neither one takes the lead. A wee pochily word stap it foo in my head, each living in fear that the other upstages. They loup for my head for to bide on the pages, switching from too explicit to overly vague. He twa leads to folly, my brain's wee stravage. One language must hide, lest the other besiege it. Again is my word, that I'm only an Egypt. I wanted to keep the English like really dead formal as well, so that it felt like more of a switch. And it also gave me a chance to put grew in, which is my favourite Scots word at the moment, because it's a greyhound. And I think we should bring that one back. And the next piece I'm going to do is called sgliff, right? So people would ask me what my favourite Scots word is, which they do all the time, ad nauseum. I would say boke, to vomit. I love it. It's great. Verb, noun, standalone sentence. Stunning, gorgeous. In Shetland, they say bjork, which is even more onomatopoeic, so I think it's great. Anyway, so my favourite Scots word is actually sgliff, which, I mean, it's not very sexy, it's no boke, but it means to thinly slice or peel something in this context. Like, you could sgliff an orange, sgliff an apple. And it's my favourite Scots word because, like for a lot of Scots speakers, it takes me back to a particular moment in time or a person. So when I hear the word sgliff, I'm sitting on my papa's knee, right? Because he had one thumb and a knife. The story is not going when you think it is. Not related. And you're laughing, but it was a pretty serious engineering accident, right? That taken away the thumb. But he had one thumb and a knife, right? And I was a pernickety wean, and I still am, but it's not quite as socially acceptable. And I wouldn't eat an apple with the skin on it. So he would sit and he would sgliff this apple, right, all the way around, not break the skin once, and he would hold it up and he would clap. And he would sit and he would hand feed me, sgliff this entire apple. 45 minutes it took me to eat an apple. 45 minutes. But it taught me so many things. It taught me that if somebody loves you in the right way, they will make the world accessible to you. They'll sgliff it for you. But it also taught me that if you greet, you'll get what you want. And that is a lesson that will be with me to the day that I die. So this is a piece called Sgliff. Wee lassie sits on Papa's knee as he sgliffs off the skin. He a braw, pink lady apple, gies the wane bits, paper thin. She's awfully young to understand that life is our short. And e'en say we, there is nae problem Papa canna sort. Now, our ma misses our father. Huds together for the wains. Our heart is stap at foo, ache, guy scunner with the pains. Our life's no been the same since our dad ta'en his final breath. The wain still thinks he can come home, too young to ken of death. How dare the earth keep spinning when the licht flees for your soul and you're fankle up with feelings that you canna yet control. The years pass with a vengeance, and I'm stap it with our stew. This grief's a smit, it's off his shit. They ought to find a cure. I'll mind to no forget your love was aye a gift. And life felt that bit easier when my apples were all sgliffed.
Thank you. So we're going to turn to Michael Peterson now. And Michael started as a poet and has now a couple of novels. The latest one, Muckle Flugga, and Michael is also the Edinburgh Macker. For some reason, I always want to say Macher. It sounds more right.
You get a lot of macaw out there as well.
Oh, right,
Sounds
macaw,
like a sort of
right.
exotic bird calling out.
Yeah, it's like
I'm
McKay
all
for
for it,
Mackay,
yeah.
the Edinburgh Macker. So
I did also get called the Edinburgh Mincer once. To be honest, it's closer to the truth. So yeah.
we should start calling you that. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So, Michael, thinking about your work and your writing, and you thinking about Muckle Flugga, for example, you have Scots in there in terms of the dialogue. Would you want to talk a little bit about?
Yeah, first up, I'll address the elephant in the room. I'm very much sitting at the kiddies' table alongside David Tennant when it comes to the Scots language. So I'm here to feast on this beautiful sapience, and I've already got a history lesson. I think I speak the most diluted version of Scots out of all my family.
Okay.
So it's looking up to that. Like my granny speaks a much broader Scots, and then my mum a little bit less, and then me a little bit less than that. But it's always punctuated my entire writing career. The first poems that I wrote properly were in Scots, you know. I loved writing little angsty teenage poems. I was terrified about my pals finding them and ripping the piss out of me. It was something to be a little bit, you know, ashamed of back at Portobello High back in the day. So I'd write them secretly in this wee notepad, and I would get a Scots dictionary, like Len was saying, and I've always loved being ensorcelled by esoteric language, cookie words, and Scots is so peppered with all these little beautiful jewels, so I would try and find a few key ones of those and just lay them into the poems. So the first poems I ended up having published were in the high school magazine called Porty Blethers. A Scots language loving teacher at the school started it. And then that way there was this sort of degree of separation between me and getting a ribbon off my pals. Because if they wanted to rib me for my angsty teenage poetry, which was very much hidden behind those Scots words, they too would have to crack out the dictionary. And by that point, let's face it, they'd earned it. But yeah, I'd say Muckle Flugga, being a fiction novel, actually maybe has a lot less Scots in it than a lot of the poetry does. Yet at the same time, I remember reading a review from an American reader and said, oh, I came for the romantic lighthouse story, but I was met with an onslaught of the Scots language that alienated us American readers. And I was pretty proud of that, because at that point I thought I'd had my most diluted, minimalistic version of the Scots language in this book, yet I'd still managed to alienate the American reader, which maybe says more about the American reader and less about my dexterity with its Scots. So yeah, it's always been there for me, but at the same time, it's always a conversation. Every time I've published a poetry book, a non-fiction book, a fiction book, I've had to sit down with the editor, now at English publishing houses in Faber and Little Brown, who have no command of the Scots language, and sort of question every element of it, if this has to be in Scots, if it's relevant to the story. So you have to sort of justify and authenticate it. And most of the time, if it's dialogue, and that's authentically how that character would speak, and it makes them more gallously them, then it absolutely does. But I guess I sort of drift loyally and disloyally in and out of Scots in the storytelling, narratorial sort of omniscient narrator perspective. And I have to think about why I'm doing that. And normally it's just a sort of gut instinctual thing, because it's coming naturally to me that this is how that story would be best serviced by language.
And certainly I like the way, by the way, that you apologise for being in the Scots Standard English end of the continuum.
Well, normally I wouldn't, but when you're put on a platform with Scots language above your head, it's a different expectation.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's quite interesting to have that reaction from the American reader. But certainly, so I listened to the book on Audible, and you had it was a brilliant narrator, and you had all
It wasn't me, by the way.
And you had all those different voices in Scots absolutely coming through. So Robert Louis Stevenson was very much of that very middle class Edinburgh, yes, but distinctly Scots as well.
So I've done all my other audiobooks. I did all the poetry ones, I did the non-fiction one, but I didn't do Muckle Flugga, because it's a fiction book and there was too many character voices and too much of a age range for me to give a consistent gentle and enjoyable narration of that book. So we got a Scottish actor called Jack Loudon to do it. I like his voice. I've seen him on stage. I've seen him on screen. He's amazing. He's been in everything. He's from you know, he's played Siegfried Sassoon in Benediction. He was in Mary Queen of Scots. He's in Slow Horses. But if you're going to get someone else to do your audiobook, make sure they're younger, more attractive, and more talented than you. And Jack ticks all those boxes. But I had to think carefully about whose voice could lend itself to those characters. And Jack does a brilliant job. He inhabits the book. He becomes that sort of genteel Edinburgh middle-class character with resurrect the ghost of Robert Louis Stevenson and bring him back as a life coach and confidant to a lighthouse keeper's son. I'm sure you've done the same. And then the father has a more sort of a broader Scots vernacular to his voice. He's from somewhere on the west coast, but he's a bit shifty about where he's actually come from because he's looking to forget his past a little bit. And Oos is the only character that's actually born on the island of Muckleflugga, which is not me trying to say motherfucker by innuendo. It's a very, very real island up in the north of Shetland. Used to be the most northerly inhabited island in the UK. When the census deemed the lighthouse keepers lived there full time, but since they've automated them, that's went back to Unst. But Oost has a more sort of lilting, whimsical voice, and I made the choice not to bastardise my own attempt at a Shetland dialect and gave him this almost like nymph-like spirit voice of the island.
Yeah, that's brilliant, and that makes absolute sense because I couldn't place him, and I see now you've done that deliberately. Yeah, interesting. Yeah,
I didn't want to get in trouble with the Shetlanders, knowing that I was doing a book tour there in a couple of months. So
right, I see.
But no.
And interesting what you said about the pressures from the publishers.
To be honest, they're not pressures, they're supportive, but they're just calling into question because they don't have the knowledge to, especially with the poetry editors. I'm working with, you know, London-based poetry editors who don't have a command of the Scots language, so they're leaning into me more to make sure that I'm expressing that with a degree of exactitude that they can get behind without having, I guess, requisite speaking or written knowledge of the Scots language. So I almost have to sell them on its relevance, which I enjoy doing because it really justifies just how much I glory over the Scots language and its storytelling capabilities. It often comes through in dialogue, but I think it has, when I want a poem that has a deeper musicality to it, I sometimes lean into Scots there. I find myself clutching at Scots words for like this instant, beautiful, almost visceral musicality. And I have poems that just really oscillate between the two in a way that it just feels most natural to tell that story that way. And to be honest, my editors, when it comes to the Scot language, are all my high school pals. It's like, here, how would you spell Gadgie? And then sometimes it kicks off and we can't get to an agreement. But, you know, I lean into it phonetically and then go with the majority rules folk with my high school friends. So it's amazing to call them back into action in that way because it's, you know, it's that version of myself I'm writing into a lot of the time. Humiliating childhood experiences that I'm trying to claw something back from the ashes of.
Interesting. And I suppose the issue as well with what you said, the publishers have been supportive, but I suppose it's the issue that Len was talking about as well, it's exposure. So for example, none of us really understood Geordie, and then Cheryl Cole came along, right? And we all got used to hearing that all the time. And that's really what's happening with Scots, I think, much more now as well. There's much more exposure to it.
Peaky Blinders, the Brummie accent went through the roof and became one of the sort of least affectionate on the ear to one of the most affectionate. You just had to get Cillian Murphy to do a Brummie accent and then it changed the terrain.
To get him speaking Scots.
That's absolutely right. Although I think in all the polls they do, Brummie still comes last, unfortunately.
It's a lesser last than it used to be.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Only way is up.
I do a lot of international readings. I'm really lucky. You know, books are coming out. At the moment, Muckleflugga's just finished being translated into German and next French and then Spanish and Italian. It's amazing to see. I always have to do a Scots language translation myself to give to the translator before they even start. So even though my use of Scots language is maybe lighter than Len or Chrissy's, it's something that I have as part of my professional practice at every stage of my publishing career. And when I do a lot of the readings, if I'm leaning out of it a little bit, I guess I have a version of an international reading voice, which pulls back from my own accent and my own language to make it more accessible within the room.
Right.
So it is something that constantly inhabits my day-to-day life as a writer.
Yeah, and even though there's a little bit of Scots in Michael Flugga, it's so Scottish.
Yeah.
It's interesting, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember that, my agent having a conversation with an American publisher, and she was like, oh, well, it's such a Scottish story, though. Are the American audience is going to get it? And I was like, I'll tell you now, this one reader says no, but maybe we'll win them back. So yeah, that's something that stocks it as well. The title Michael Flugga has not survived any of the translations, as you might imagine. It's became Der letzte Leuchtturm, the last lighthouse in German, and Le Fer de l'Impossible, the impossible lighthouse in French. So I thought Michael Flugga, if it makes it into German, we might stand a chance in some of the other languages. But as soon as it fell there, I knew French or Spanish or Italian was not going to follow suit.
Ah, great. Do you want to read?
Yes.
Give us a reading, that would be great.
So I'll see if I can batter through a couple of poems. A few years ago, more years ago now than whenever I've read this poem before, I got the Robert Louis Stevenson residency, which used to be this amazing thing that ran in Scotland via the Scottish Books Trust, where you would get some prize money and they would send you over to France in a place called Grèce-sur-Lyon for a month to swan around being a fancy as feck writer. You got to sort of inhabit this space and follow in the footsteps of Stevenson. But what they didn't tell you about that prize is that it's actually a very good dating opportunity, because this sort of chateau hotel building is southwest of Paris, and I thought, I'm never going to have the opportunity to invite someone to Paris that I can then whisk off to my chateau in the suburbs again. So thankfully I was on the cusp of a new relationship. I cast out that invite, the person accepted. We met in Paris, I did the cliched thing and got in champagne and oysters. She then reminded me she was a lifelong vegetarian. I thought, this isn't going quite as well as I was hoping for. So I thought, right, well, fuck the oysters, let's go off to Grèce-sur-Lyon. This can only get better from now on then. There's the chateau, there's the boat, there's all this amazing stuff around there. Things are in my favour. I had, however, overlooked the human element, and that was me. There was rumours that Robert Louis Stevenson's old boat was there and you could take it out and everything like that, but we never took the boat downstream. I couldn't even find it. Never had the bicycles out skinny dipped in the Gelid River or went walking down that motorway. The only restaurant in town was shut, was also the bar, the nightlife to boot. Our prize-winning baker went away on sojourn, day of your arrival, and I'd been sending teas and snaps of his baguettes and sugared tarts, that wee French fancy. Never had a crumb of it. The shower blocked. It overflowed. You stood in shite in the moors. That mansion house, festooned in festive decor, garish as you've ever seen, you never saw. It rained, poured, the air frosted, nipped like a bairn's pinch. That puckish kid I was warning when never showed his ruddy face, petit mère. We never fucked in the forest in those tube socks I canonised. There's a suspicious stain on your new silk dress. Sorry, I did wash it. I did wash it. You didn't need to know that. But I fell asleep on the final night, though you were feeling gabby. All that happened and never happened when you came to me in Grèce-sur-Lyon. But let me tell you this, you made the wind seem softer, the giant auburn leaves glow, the tumbling stream turned susurrus, so more birdsong I know. We kissed for hours, and it felt like hardly getting started. It was great. Your hands, your tongue, the way they run was great. And I'm pretty sure we fell in love some. Love begins to balance things out, or near enough for now. And though the baker and the restaurateur reappeared with sly, scheming unison, and all town's lights beamed out as you sung carols of joy and grace, it was never better, not ever, than you here in their place. And this, I'll read this one just because it's a wee example of me sort of starting in standard English, going into a little bit of Scots, and then plucking myself back out of it. It was the first poem I got commissioned to write as Edinburgh's Macker. Was a 900th birthday party celebration poem to Edinburgh as a city turning 900, also acknowledging 20 years of UNESCO City of Literature, which is, you know, no small feat. As a first thing to fall in your inbox, I thought they would start me off slow with, you know, a poem to my granny. But no, this was it. So I was searching for Edinburgh's heart. I thought, where would the heart of this city be? So I searched all through the buildings and then thought, it has to come back to the people. Edinburgh, it's high time you came in for a heart checkup. At no shy of 1,000 years old, it's scandalously overdue. The big question's not why, but where that flesh-thumping genius has been hunkering down. First stop's the volcano top, or is it somewhere closer, a castle terrace, sandstone sculpted and cannon-clad, perhaps within the lava cliffs of Samson's Ribs, and outside bets the Jack Kane Sports Centre. And don't count out the film house, warrioring back into sight and sound. Fair call for the Royal Infirmary, with its elegies and swan songs, those requiems of life, whilst the Portobello bookshop and Moss Kitchen are hot contenders for the Hearts Atria, the National Library and Sheephen Inn Skittle Alley strike fair claim to the ventricles. I always thought that strike was well placed in that sentence. Less so when you have to draw attention to it. Edinburgh. I've heard it said a good heart's a rescued vessel, rescuing vessels. You're complicated, abstruse and arcane, treacherous closes in summer rain, hugs boson with double helix twists of Jekyll and Hyde. Edinburgh, Rajworks, cutting gallus shapes on the dance floor 1 minute, fist bumping your ain craggy chest with tears in the cobbled gutters, the next limbs entwined, all curly-whirly and caily-canny, fluming down a row of opened arms, beaming like a mother whose bairn is growing up to be kind. Those cherry blossom walkways, timeless. Those gum clinics, vital. And the nurses. Praise be the nurses and teachers that polish up kids' rusty lustre. As patches on arms are just the start of the battle, 900 street lamps are an insufficient number to light your mottled darks, such garish, gothic splendour. Edinburgh, I love you. You hurt me. I'm so, so grateful. Easy on the reins of your art. May your melange of mackers stir the city's souled soup long beyond this troubled epoch. Both more scuzzier and glam than the movies make you, than the scribes ink you. A double decade as the world's first city of literature. Let's say it again. The world's first. Yikes, swoon, gurgle, gardyloo. Edinburgh, stay humble and open as the pages in your oldest and newest books. Stay soft as the jam jelly in the warm bellies of your wall walkers, litter pickers, blood donors and stone skimmers. Jackie, Caius, Shirley, Val, Hannah and Kat, Gemma, Eamon, John O'Greg, Jenny, Ian and Irv. They're all rooting for you. They too love you. Edinburgh, don't waver in doling out your precious succour, at home and afar. There's risk in every tender protest, ache in every bolt of growth. If it hurts, it's real. Remember, it was you who taught us that.
That's great. Thanks, Michael. Great. Thank you. And we'll move on to Chris McQueer. And Chris has 2 volumes of short stories. And then was it December 25?
February last year.
Oh, February last year. Got that wrong. His first novel, Hermit. And Chris, you have said in various, I've seen you in interviews and stuff, you've said you write the way you speak. Mm-hmm. Can you talk us through a little bit of how that works?
Aye, it's just when I first started writing around about sort of 2015, and when I sat down to write a short story, for whatever reason, that when I started writing it just came out, just the way I talk, it just felt natural to me. I wasn't trying to make a kind of political statement or anything. this is how I talk, so this is obviously how I'm going to write. Do you know what I mean? And I've just kind of stuck with it. It just feels right. You know what I mean? Like, I just can't really say it any other way. It just feels correct.
And it certainly reads right. You hear it, and yeah, absolutely. And in terms of how do you decide how you're going to represent got, for example, if it's, you know, in terms of the orthography, because you
just kind of like phonetically, like just like we were saying, you know, like just how it sounds, you know what I mean? And then, but sometimes also how it looks on the page. So like when you were talking about canny earlier, like Cannae, that looks right to me. But I know a lot of people disagree with it. You know what I mean?
They're wrong.
And just wee things like that. But I think a lot of my writing in Scottish actually came from Twitter. So kind of run about, I would say from sort of 2012 to about 2017 on Twitter seemed to be the time that everybody in Glasgow and the surrounding areas created Twitter accounts, and then we were all sort of tweeting the way we talk, and then every now and again an English person would stumble upon these tweets and be like, what is this? What does this fucking say? And then everybody would go fucking apeshit and just jump on it, do you know what I mean? Like, and I loved that, and so maybe that's kind of part of the reason why I started writing in Scots as well. I loved that, and I loved when you'd see a tweet for somebody up in Aberdeen or something, and suddenly I'd be the one going, what the fuck is that? And I loved that. I just love the huge variety of Scots and just how different it is for wee tunes. And I love how, like, to people in anybody feel like north of Glasgow is a trictor, and do you know what I mean? I think stuff like that is really funny, and like I just love the language. It's
yeah, absolutely.
so fun,
and of course, it was always for centuries. It was a spoken form, and then all of a sudden with social media, we started seeing it written down exactly as you're talking about now. So that opened up a whole world of how you represent it and what it looks like, etc.
And also just I like how my granny talks. You know, she's very East End Glasgow, and she'll say things now, even now that I'm like, what the fuck? What does that mean? Like, what are you talking about? Like some crazy word for hundreds of years ago. Do you know what I mean? She'll just fling it in, and I just love that. And then seeing it written down, how it looks and how it feels when you're reading it, and how it lights up your brain. You know what I mean? I just think, oh, brilliant.
Yeah. And I notice as well in your writing, some of your short stories are what really at the Broad Scots end, and it's all in that very phonetically, and then others are you're moving between dialogue, and then the prose in between is more standard. Is that a deliberate choice, or
it just kind of depends. So like the stories that I've written in completely all Scots would be like when it's like first person narrator. So you're getting there in a monologue, and that's obviously how I imagine there in a monologue would be like. So it'd be in totally Broad Scots. But then I don't know. Sometimes I think when I'm writing in third person, like doing the prose in English, and I feel like it makes the dialogue really pop out and kind of sparkle and stand on its own. Do you know what I mean? You just get a feeling. I try and I teach creative writing now in the prisons, and I kind of try and teach the guys to use Scots, and they'll say, but how do you know when it's right to use it? I'm like, you don't. That's the thing. You just feel it. You fucking know. Just trust it. Do you know what I mean? And same like if you do a kind of school visit and stuff, you just go for it. You know what I mean? Like with the standardised spelling and stuff, it doesn't matter. Does it sound right to you? Does it look right to you? Then that's good enough. Just do it the same way every time and run with it.
And really interestingly, because there's no standard written Scots, but because you're writing as you speak, it's so systematic. Because we know with our speech, it has to be systematic. A kid would never learn it otherwise, right? So even though it's not standard English, it's still completely systematic. And you absolutely see that in your writing. There's an absolute systematicity. You might look at it and think, you think this looks like a mess. And then it's like, that's not the case at all. You'll be glad to know it's completely systematic. And going back to Michael's point about publishers and stuff, have you had pushback, especially in the novel form, or?
A wee bit, but when I was kind of doing the edits for for Hermit, my editor's Ella, she's Irish. So, and then she's obviously working for like a London publisher. So there's like a couple of wee turns of phrase in it. And she was like, I don't get this. What does it mean? So I think there was a bit where like the granny in the book is like looking for her daughter, and then she sees her and she goes, "Oh, there, you're there." She was like, "There, you're there." What? You know what I mean, and stuff. Or like, I was trying to explain that to her. Like, would you actually say that? And I don't know why. We just say it. Or if you're looking for like something, a pair of something, you go, "Oh, there, there." You know what I mean? Trying to explain that. I think there was another one in my first book. My editor for my first book was English. Or just a sentence that he heard a chap at the door. And he was like, but he opens the door and there's a woman. Or chap means. Wee things that I didn't realise were Scots.
Yeah.
It turns out, aye.
It's fun, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really interesting.
There. We have this thing, me and my friend who's Glaswegian, because we don't have that up in the northeast, and I love it. So we go into B&M and I ask the shop assistant where the Haribo is, because she's going to go there. So just the thrill of hearing it, absolute thrill.
I got one from the lawyers once when Boyfriend was getting its legal read because it was non-fiction. I said, we never had any writers in our family, but my granny was a cleaner and she cleaned the flat of this notorious, in a good way, Edinburgh writerly couple, and I would pick her up there deliberately so I could steal a swatch of what a writer's flat looked like and steal a swatch inside their flat. And then the legal question was, should you be admitting to stealing this swatch? And there was two other questions. What is the monetary value of the swatch? And if called upon, could you give it back? I was like, no, it's just a like sort of clandestine glance of it, uninvited. So it's okay. They can't sue me.
Yeah. And there's so many of those things, we're using it and we don't realise exactly, as you said. The other one is clap the dog. What? Clap. It's so, it just slips, it's below our radar, but those are really specifically Scots things. So when we're talking about Scots, we tend to think of those what we call overt Scotticisms, like coo for cow and mare for more, but there's also all these covert Scotticisms that we're using all the time and we simply don't know we are.
But the one everybody always talks about, like, out with being a Scottish one.
Yeah.
That's
I was
crazy.
I was about 28
What did they
before I
say?
realised that was Scottish. But I was also about 18 before I realised that not everyone said quines for girls. I was literally about 18, So all of these things, and I suppose if you're writing in the way you speak, and then all of those covert things are coming out as well, because there's no suppression of them as well. It's just,
Definitely.
So,
I think that's sort of just, I don't know, it's part of your being, isn't it? It just comes out in you.
yeah, absolutely.
You can't hide it.
And also in Hermit, so in Hermit it's a chapter on the young lad speaking, and then a chapter from his mother's perspective, Fiona. And I thought you did really beautifully the two different voices, because they've got different forms of Scots. It's slightly different. And that, so the younger boy and the mother and male, female, I thought that was done really, really brilliantly as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. It was nice, sort of kind of in my book Hermit. Like, Jamie's kind of loosely based on my wee brother, and Fiona's kind of loosely based on my mum. So I had two good reference points to kind of just how would they say it. You know what I mean? I could phone them, but how would you say this? You know what I mean? Like,
It's very handy to have that.
And I like playing a bit with Scots, especially when it comes to like class as well. You know, like kind of working class Scots is obviously different from middle class Scots, and how we would just. I like playing a bit with that, and I like using Scots to kind of show a character's kind of position in the social hierarchy and things like that as well. I think sometimes with Scots as well, like mine sort of, I don't know if it's like internalised, I don't know, like inferiority complex or something, kind of comes out, because there's times where I'll sort of write in like standard English, and then when I need to, like you were talking earlier about people saying like Scots is kind of masculine and rough sounding, like I don't know, I had that in the back of my mind sometimes where I was like, I don't know, like in Hermit I kind of tried to be like Jamie's internal monologue would be like a wee bit smoother than his actual dialogue. His dialogue would be quite like in Scots, whereas his internal monologue be just a kind of slightly softer version of that, and that was to show how he has a kind of working class, like he comes from a working class background, and I don't know, I thought it was kind of interesting. I did that without realising, you know what I mean? It was only kind of after I realised what I was doing. I was like, fuck, what's this saying about me? Would I, you know, do I need to go to therapy or something?
And I suppose we have those conflicting feelings in a way. So there's this, again, talk about overt Scotsisms, covert Scotsisms, and we also have overt prestige, covert prestige. So overt prestige is I have to talk in a certain way because that'll get me a job that pays well. And covert prestige is I want to speak in my own tongue because that's a friendly and that's saying I think I'm funny and came what I mean. So there's two different pools all the time going on, which...
Aye. It's interesting. I always, like, my work in the prison, I teach English to speakers of other languages, so I've got a lot of Vietnamese guys, Albanians and stuff. And I'll hear the kind of prisoners for the East End of Glasgow try and talk to them, but they don't change their accent at all. Do you know what I mean? I just think, and then other guys who are from East End, but they'll really slow it down and really try and do it. I think it's interesting how some people code switch and some people just don't, and they would never even think to try and change their accent or soften their accent to make themselves easier to be understood. They just go for it, you know what I mean? Just take me as I am. Whereas other people, you know, I'm quite guilty of that. I'll definitely kind of change my voice depending on who I'm talking to. Yeah. I'm that worried about being misunderstood or maybe like looked down on or something, you know what I mean? It's kind of strange how
it's quite interesting as well because when you look at Scots and it's like you said, I'm guilty of that, the moving around, the switching. But if someone said, you know, I'm bilingual, you'd go, oh, no, you're not bilingual, are you? Like it was a negative thing, whereas it could be we could see it as a positive thing, right? That we've got this flexibility to move around,
Definitely. I always like getting to do like school visits and stuff, and maybe doing a class with like, I don't know, like primary fours or primary fives, maybe like a group of kids that haven't really written before, and when you tell them you can write the way you talk, it fucking blows their mind, and it's amazing to see, you know, and you say just write it, you know, like however you would text or whatever, just write it like that, and just the freedom it seems to give them and how much confidence and energy it gives them to go and be more creative. That's really, I love seeing that.
Yeah, brilliant. Chris, do you want to read something? Do you want to?
Aye.
Yeah.
Geez, are we reading? I'll read the kind of first sort of 2 pages from my new book, Hermit. So this is wee guy Jamie. So Jamie's he's 19 when we meet him in the book, and he left school when he was 16, and he's not left the house for 3 years. He's barely left his room, and this is him kind of recalling an event from his childhood that maybe he misremembers or his mum remembers a wee bit differently, but this is how he remembers it. She doesn't love me, I said, not even looking up for my Game Boy. I was maybe 6 years old, I think, sitting in my granny's living room. My ma and my granny immediately stopped the conversation they were having, and I could tell they were staring at me. What? Snapped my granny. I glanced up. Huh? I nodded at my ma. She doesn't love me. My ma was laughing, nervously, maybe looking back on it. But aye, I do, she said, looking to me and then my granny, who was all worked up. What's he saying that for? My granny shouted. I don't know, said my ma. I've no idea. My granny told me to come here, and I went and stood in front of them both. You don't think your ma loves you? My granny asked. She loomed over me at that age, a massive personality. I was riddled with more anxiety in her presence than that of any teacher I had through school. I didn't ever really talk to her, but for some reason I just blurted that out. People on the telly were always saying I love you. They would say it to their wains, to their partners, to anybody they were close to, and it always seemed so easy for them. A few days before, I'd heard somebody's ma say it to them when they were getting dropped off at school. All my ma ever said to me when she dropped me off was, right, see you later. I shook my head. How no? She never tells me she loves me. She never cuddles me or anything. My ma laughed again here. You never tell me that you love me, she said, but I still know you do. I shrugged my shoulders. I didn't know how to articulate it back then, but I just felt as if she should be telling me that she loved me. Right, we're going to need to take you to the hospital then. Come on, my granny said, getting up off the couch. What? Why? I asked. I felt a big lump rise in my throat as if it came all the way from my toes. because there must be something wrong with your brain if you don't think your ma loves you, Jamie. Ah, you'll need an operation, I think, chimed in my ma. Maybe a brain transplant. I started greeting then, I remember. My granny said, come here. But no in the angry way she'd said it before, it was all drawn out and nice. I moved closer to her and she grabbed me. As my granny held me tight into her, I looked at my ma. All I wanted her to do was say, I love you. Or join in and we'd have a big cuddle together like I'd seen American families do in films. All she offered me was a wee smile. She sat back and started reading her magazine. I love you, my granny said into my ear. And so does your ma, your granda and all. Everybody. It's all right. It's all right. They might not say it, but they do. Now you go and play your wee game. I pulled away for her embrace. I'd left a big wet mark down her top. Sorry, I said, and I went back to playing Pokemon. My ma winked at me, but she never ever said I love you, even after that day.
Lovely, thank you. Thank you. So, questions, folks, for three writers. And there's mics going round as well. There's the obligatory 10-second awkwardness, and then thank you.
It's even worse when you do it in schools. Nobody puts their hand up and it's like, right, I'll start asking you questions.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah, you can hear me. So my mum was Cornish. My dad was half English. I was brought up not to speak Scots, despite the fact I was originally brought up in Scotland. But Len, when you read your poem, I could understand every word of it. So where does that come from? To add to that, I lived in Scotland until I was 8, moved away until I was 12, came back for a few years to do secondary education. But I don't ever speak in Scots, but I understand it. I don't understand how I understand it.
So that's actually something called magic. It's a couple of things. It's when you understand a sister language of a language, you can kind of pick a lot up. So like when I can't read Portuguese, but because I studied Spanish, when I see Portuguese, I'm like, oh, that's a cognate, that's a word that sounds a bit similar, so you can get it like that. But also I think context plays a lot when you might not understand every single word, but you understand what it means. It's fankle up with feelings, like it's something to do with like being tangled up, being like, constricted. So it has a lot to do with that. But also I think you pick up a lot more than you realise when you're around people, that sort of stealth Scots, that Scotticisms, the sorts of things that you pick up. And there'll be things that you don't even realise. I had to add a real debate when I got my edits back for poems. I didn't realise you could push back on edits. So I was like, what do you mean 5,000 changes? But there was a bit of it was 40 day something, like for to do something. I would say that. So I had to be like, that's actually not a grammar mistake. But also the double modal of you can do something. You can do something. Like so that I had to push. You know what I mean? I had to push back on that. So you might not know that you're picking stuff up, but you're picking it up. And I think the good thing about Scots is because it does have that proximity to English, it helps you understand it because you're halfway there. Living on a prayer. You're a part of the way there, knowing enough of the language just by living and engaging it. But and Cornwall's lovely. They've got a big Cornish language. Like Cairnow's having a massive moment at the minute. There's so many minority languages that are having a similar renaissance to Scots, which is so nice to see.
I don't know where a lot of my words come from. I don't know if they're Cornish, English, Scots, whatever.
That's it. We're all a beautiful melange. What you said? Beautiful melange.
Any language used that way is like, because Len's poems are so, they feel invitational. You can tell she's excited to use the language, so I think it welcomes you in. And even if you don't necessarily know the exactitude of the word, it's used with such welcomeness and vivaciousness that I think you find your own meaning within it. And it'll probably be roughly where the word sits.
Thank you.
And you get two types of writers in terms of the way they use language. There's those that are trying to sort of use it in a white picket fence fashion, use the jargon, exhibit their intellectualism, or you get sort of jargon within the legal profession that's built to keep you out. You always need someone's services to execute that language. But if someone's genuinely excited about a language and have used it as in a creative capacity, they've also embedded into that a sort of drawbridge down fashion that welcomes you in. They want you to join them there.
Thank you. I like that I'm being put in opposition to intellectualism as well. My mother will be thrilled.
Into opposition to jargonism.
No, I always say the only slang in my videos is the linguistic jargon that I use. So noun, adjective, I'll always say noun or a naming word, adjective or describing word, because that's the only jargon and slang that I think is in my videos. And I like to break that down because I don't know if somebody's had a good time at the school or not. Definitive article in front of a noun, well, that's a Scots thing as well.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
The school.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's I don't know if somebody's, I love linguistics, but a lot of people don't. They think it's really boring, or maybe the school wasn't accessible to them. So I want to break that down so they're not thinking, what the hell's a noun? Because there's always a Wayne at the back of the class thinking, what the hell's a noun? And nobody wants to be the one to put their hand up. And I was always the one that would be like, hold on, what's a noun? Even if I knew what a noun was, because you just want to make sure that everybody's on the same page so they don't feel excluded. So, yeah, thank you for saying I'm invitational.
Sorry, if I can just follow up one quick thing on so what we know in linguistics is you start off sounding like your mum and dad in the home, and as soon as you go to school, you start sounding like your peers. So in a way, you still sound Scottish, right? So you move away from the model of the parents and then start sounding like your peers. And perhaps the other thing that goes on is we can understand more than we can produce. So you might not be able to speak in what you would describe as Scots, but you can understand it more. There's a much higher level of perception and understanding. Yeah.
That's a great question. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. I'm a Kiwi and I was forced to learn RP very, very young, so I can't remember what I am supposed to sound like, but I've been in Edinburgh for 9 months and begun a love affair with Scots and Old Scots. My question to you all is, it emerging, like we see Gen Z coming up with all of these new words. What's the push forward, and are you a part of that? It's exciting for me.
I am Gen Z. I might not look it, but yeah, I know what you mean with like the sort of coining of new words and phrases and things. I think it's great, and a lot of what's interesting is a lot of people look down on the Gen Z speak. I think it's amazing. A lot of it comes from AAE, African American English. So I think it's just a beautiful way of how language evolves and how it grows and augments itself. But there's an interesting thing within Scots where Scots speakers some of them have a threshold where they'll say, I love Scots, I love the language, but I draw the line here. For a lot of people, that's jamp. It's all right. For a lot of people, that's tell. For a lot of people, that's, there's a murny, I need it. I put that in deliberately because for a lot of people, a murny is just, that's lingua non grata. That's no good. And so I think it's interesting that you say that push forward, because for many people, the coining of new words and phrases, they push back on that in Scots because they think we have no right to, have new words and phrases, which is it's interesting. I don't know how you feel about this, but there's a lot of gaps in the language because of that attempted eradication, because of that history. Sometimes you just use the English word for it, but then also that happens in English all the time. What's the English word for a restaurant? Do you know what I mean? So I think there's two sides to the argument where using an English word doesn't negate the Scots that you're using within a sentence, but also I would love to see new words and phrases being coined. I try and coin them. I'm still trying to get Glasgow adjacent to catch on, but it hasn't. So if you do get the opportunity to talk about the peripheries of Glasgow, Glasgow adjacent. Because I'm from Airdrie and I was looking for a way to describe how I'm from without being like, it's a little mouse out of Glasgow adjacent. Use it, please.
I suppose as well with the Gen Z, so one thing, it's so counterintuitive, but language is always changing, it's always moving on. And what's the evidence for that? I call it the granny test. Do you sound like your granny? No, that's because language is changing all the time. and there is always that kickback. So it's like Chesterfield good, IKEA sofa bad. We don't like new things. We think older things are better somehow, but that's not how language works at all. And in terms of you're getting, so the other thing about Scots is it said that we're being, you know, all the changes are coming up from London, the English, and making it more English. But that is not really the case. We're now having a load of what we call homegrown changes. So the use is one, use for you. Gonna, or gonna know, or gonna you is another one. Here it's, there it's, etc. And we're seeing those starting in the metropolitan area, rather than coming from London. They start in Glasgow, they move to Edinburgh and move up the west coast and the east coast, and all the way through. So those homegrown changes that actually make Scots more different. And my favourite intensifiers, we call them pure. It's in your book as well. It's pure. That was pure raging, etc. Yeah, people like that's not Scots. It is if Scots speakers are using it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Definitely.
It's like anything, isn't it? Language is this living organism, and it's so good to be alive at the same time as these language. I love inventing new words, coining new phrases. We do it all the time with portmanteaus.
Yeah.
So,
And we're in bad shape if Scots isn't changing, because it means it's dead.
Yeah. It's got to be living. It's got to be moving to be living.
Yeah.
I also love an Americanism. People hate Americanisms. I think they're great.
Yeah.
I think they're neat.
So we've got a question from online and then a question over here. Online, we have the advantage of putting on the magnificent subtitling, which is identified as being in English. Do you consider translation to or from English should be beneficial or even possible?
Ooh, good question. Should we translate our work into English or from English? Is that beneficial?
Do you consider translation to or from English into Scots should be beneficial or even possible?
I think it's definitely possible, unless you get a word like curry, where it's no hug, that's no a cuddle, that's something more deep and rich and meaningful. But I push back against people translating my work because I feel like some of this sentiment sometimes only makes sense. I know you said Michael Pedersen has been translated into different, but I think what my policy is always, if you're translating my work into another language and it's a majority language, I need there to be a relative minority language that the Scots gets put into. So if you're wanting a Russian translation, give me a Ukrainian translation for the Scots. You know, and you've got so many minority languages within France, within Spain. So find a language with a similar relationship, because unfortunately, the way that Scots has been treated is not specific to Scots. It's an attempted eradication. You'll see the same pattern. In fact, a lot of Scots speakers might have even exported the treatment that they got across the world when they were trying to oppress other languages. And so for me, translating into English, a lot of the sentiment gets lost, particularly when it's a piece about Scots. If it's a piece about Scots in Scots and you try and translate it into English, who's that for? And what's that doing? That's putting the onus of understanding what it's about on the person. You know, it's like me having to try and translate myself for other people to understand. I think when you're a monoglot English speaker, you're very, very comfortable with the world being for you as a default. And so I would invite people to step out with that realm of experience and understand that maybe some things were not made with you in mind, and you can still engage with them and enjoy them, like ballet or opera.
Hi there. I wonder if at some point today we'll get the description or definition of clanjamfrie. I'm here tonight because it's the second time in my life I've seen the word and it caught my attention. I think it comes from a poem. I worked as a carer, and an old lady with dementia had it as a poem on her wall. I looked it up at the time. I'll leave you to define it. But I think it comes from a Hugh McDiarmid poem about the moon and Venus and Mars. It was on her wall. So I hope someone knows what clanjamfrie means. Please tell me.
I had never heard it before, so...
I suggested the title. Based on that Hugh McDermott poem, I think the equivalent would be like the whole, like Magilla, or I would do like, translate into like the whole jamboree, like some just sort of big raucous thing going on.
I always thought I would say clanjamfrie.
Yes.
Right. So I seen that and I went initially. I was like, oh, we're going to have an argument. But as with most things in Scots, it can be both. But I'd say like a jumble, or like it can even be like it's when someone's like hoaching, it's absolutely stamp it full. Like the place, it's a clanjamfrie. Like it's just so busy with like loads of people, like a crowd or something. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
I looked it up because I thought calm jam.
I think we are right.
We decided we are too.
Yeah. Well, see, once you decide you're right, I think the world gets a bit easier. So, yeah.
The definition was about chaos.
Yeah.
Yes, chaos. So, hands up, right? So, hands up if you would do it with an N, clanjamfrie.
With an N?
With an N, yeah, with an N. N, right.
Where is that there? Yeah.
Hands up for M. Oh, sorry. I think the M's have it. Sorry, that was just for me. Me and you.
It's called a process of phonetic assimilation. I feel like I'm coming in with all the geeky linguistic stuff, like, stop laughing and I'll tell you the linguistic geeky stuff.
Okay. Yeah, that's not the only word that's spelt wrong, by the way, up there. But for me, as a non-native speaker of Scots, I found writing Scots, screeving in Scots, nae bother, with help of the Dictionary of the Scots Language and that sort of thing. But to have the courage, the smedum, to get up and read my own Scots in this accent, different matter entirely.
We'll not hold it against you.
And so I suppose my question is, I think with English, we're used to people learning English. It's, it's one of the world languages. Yeah, we laugh at people who, for accents in which they speak English, but we know it's wrong to laugh at people for the accent in which they speak English. But I'd be very interested in what you think can be done to encourage the idea that, Scots is a learnable language and that people shouldn't be embarrassed about actually speaking the language.
Do you want me to take it? I'll take it. I think Scots is inextricably linked with a Scottish accent for some context for some people. So Scots speakers will feel sometimes that their accent isn't appropriate for certain situations, and you'll have to almost put on a telephone voice to try and fit in. I've certainly been told at uni that my accent is unprofessional. I was at St Andrews, which is a hotbed of Scots language. And I was told that I don't reflect the type of student they're wanting to attract. But I was the type of student that I thought we were all pals. And there would be lectures where they'd be like, oh my God, that was actually really intelligent. Like I was a dog that just started speaking. So yeah, I think the accent is a sore spot. But what I would say is my first experience with Scots on stage was at Burns competitions, and you would hear Wayne, whose first language was Farsi or Arabic, stand on stage and do Scots like that. And nobody was judging them, because everybody kind of felt in the same boat, because nobody was speaking the way that Burns spoke. We almost felt like we were all giving it a go together. So what I would say is don't feel insecure about the accent, but just understand that you're probably not the only one. Even people speaking Scots with a Scottish accent will have encountered spaces where their accent isn't welcome and they've persevered. So understand that I think everyone will feel that insecurity at times and that their accent isn't the right one to have. And that there will be spaces where I'm sure your accent might be more the kind of thing that people want. And I think we've put RP as like this standard that everyone else is trying and failing to get to. And that's why Scottish people, when they use a glottal stop, the not pronouncing your T's even though you just pronounce them differently, rhotic R's, things like that where you pronounce the R. Even things like ing, fighting, dancing, drinking, I don't think it's unprofessional to not say the G, because in Scots, the gerunds and the IN words, they're just IN, and that's how it ends, so that's how I say it. So I think that, yeah, accent is a sore spot for a lot of people, but don't let that preclude you from engaging with the language, the same way as I'll probably never sound like I'm from Spain, because I'm not. But you need to kind of push past that, because you weren't meant to speak with a different accent than you have, and don't let other people make you feel unwelcome in a space that should be welcome for everybody.
Yeah, that's one of the big risks of Scots language, is people gatekeeping it. And if people gatekeep it and sort of exhibit their erudition of the language over you in a contentious manner, it's not going to invite people in to learn and celebrate Scots, and it's not going to keep it developing in and around at the abundance which it deserves to for such a beautiful language. Even I saw when this event came up online, I've never seen so many comments underneath event about people vehemently protesting that collectively these writers did not represent the Scots that they expect to be heard in mainstream Scottish society.
If we could have dug up Burns, we would have.
And languages are also, they're there to be spoken and read and used creatively, but they're there to be enjoyed and celebrated as well. And any barriers that you create that aren't constructive, that entice or enjoy or enthrall people to use that language, are just a real sort of terrible ulcer on the side of it. You know, the more the language is celebrated and used and thrown about, and it's risky and it's vulnerable to put yourself in those positions, but it should be met with applause more than anything else.
And if I can just come in with a linguistic thing. So we've had this thing for decades or hundreds of years where standard English is the one and Scots is not the one, is wrong. But the same happens exactly as you said, Michael and Len, as well, within Scots. So there's an idea that there's a proper form of Scots. And anything like saying pure raging is not a proper form of Scots. So there's just as much gatekeeping goes on in Scots as there is from this, you must speak standard English. Yeah.
Turns out we'll be arseholes in any language.
So, yes?
Hi, thank you. I just first of all want to say it's really nice to have 4 diverse Scots speakers up there, and it just kind of goes to show the diversity of the Scots language. My question though was round about education and what the panel thought about how Scots is taught in schools. How do they think that Scots is given its prominence in schools, or do they feel a little bit like I do that it's still a wee bit of kind of othered, in that, yes, we have kind of a January celebration of Scots as a kind of other language, or what can we do to kind of make it kind of more inclusive, more kind of within the education system?
I think if there was more a push for Scots in schools, it would definitely make more people proud of the language, more people comfortable using it and stuff. I don't know exactly what that would look like. Do you know what I mean? Like, there is you can do qualifications in like Scottish studies and things like that, but I would like to see more stuff about the Scottish language maybe embedded in the English curriculum instead of just a wee bit of buns every January. Do you know what I mean? A wee worksheet about fucking whatever, and just a wee bit. I'd like to see more.
I know a lot of teachers feel insecure about teaching it. Even if they're Scots speakers, they don't feel the confidence to actually teach something, because it's one thing to know it, another thing to know it enough to teach it, or to feel like you're welcome to teach it. So there is a teacher training module that they can do on Scots. But also I think it becomes a bit of a postcode lottery. Like in the northeast, for Doric, they'll be getting more Doric education. You know, sometimes in Glasgow you might get more of that. But a lot of the times it falls on the backs of volunteers, unpaid labour from, you know, have a granny come in and do a wee class lesson. I think we need government subsidised grannies I think we need to start paying these people for their time and for their labour, because it's essential. And I think the generational gap that exists in Scots, it doesn't need to just be addressed on one end with the Waynes. We need to also vindicate and validate the people who were getting the toss for speaking Scots, or were getting actually physically, corporally punished for speaking it. We need to let them know that not only did they not do something wrong, but they have a valuable skill, and that is an asset, and that they can be part of that conversation. So I think we need to address the generational gap on both sides. But I think certainly for a lot of teachers that I've spoken to who are fluent Scots speakers, because they don't know how to write in it, they think that they don't deserve to teach Waynes. And I think we need to, now that Scots has officially been given its recognition as a language, but I would say that, you know, when you go to the doctor, you get diagnosed with something, you didn't just get it because the doctor told you had it. So I think now Scots is a language, didn't just become a language because they said it was, but also, when, to use the same metaphor that arguably a bit convoluted, you need to, thank you. You and me on this journey together. You need the diagnosis, you need the treatment, otherwise you've still got the disease. Now Scots is a language, we need to treat it like a language. We need to get people confident and excited and enthused about speaking it. Otherwise, oh, it's a language, that's great. I'll see you in 10 years for the next meeting about it. No, we need to make sure that we actually start at a grassroots level, all the way up to a governmental level, actually treating Scots like a language, and that involves investment and it involves respect. So I think those are the two things that we need: investment and respect.
And I suppose as well, so I absolutely applaud the efforts that are going into Scots in education, but what you often get is a lesson on Scots, and it will be a Scots that none of those kids recognise. It'll be an older form, and it's very, very alienating, because it's like, oh, I don't speak Scots. Whereas, you know, they're not going to be going into a school in Easterhouse and, you know, talking about there it's there and pure raging, etc. And I think that is really a big problem, because then the kids end up thinking it's this separate thing that they go and do a lesson in, rather than embracing that massive diversity across Scotland and what kids are actually doing with that. Because that's how you learn about a language. You look at what you're doing yourself, you bring that out. Yeah.
And it's so redolent already, from, you know, Liz Lockhead to Jackie Kay. We've got Tom Leonard's poetry as well. It's so pullulating in poetry that it is that access vehicle into hopefully rolling it out more nationally, and not a teacher doing it extracurricularly, like you say with the postcode lottery. You get these incredible ambassadors for Scots, and you see the ripples in those areas. But if that gets national recognition and support and resources, it becomes this bigger wave and has a beautiful permanency to it.
Yeah, and I suppose as well, the focus on writing, though, you really want to focus on the voice, because that is the thing. You know, writing's an abstraction in a way, in many ways, so focusing on the voice, and I think this...
Great questions, by the way.
Yeah.
Following... Hello? Goodness, who's that? Following on from folk asking about Scots in education, I worked as a mobile librarian for 10 years in West Lothian, and there was a study done, about 30 years ago, about where is Scots spoken most consistently, and it was Armadale in West Lothian, much to my surprise. And I thought that was great, because there's a lot of, as you discover in Scots language, there's a lot of things that don't translate easily. And there's like curie, or being a bit pocky, pocky being like hands, and, you know, giving somebody a clap and currying up to them and all that stuff. So that's great that Scots is very strong, and I'm very proud to be from West Lothian. We're neither here nor there. Hated on both coasts, and north and south. I'd go to Glasgow and get beat up for being from Edinburgh, and I'd go to Edinburgh and get beat up for being from Glasgow. But I grew up in Livingston Newtown, so it was talk about a clanjamfrie, definitely. The jeering crowd, the chaotic, riotous mob, that was us linguistically. And we have our own mixture of accents, because West Lothian had its own accent before Livingston was transplanted with all these incomers. So I can proudly say that Scots is strong at least in West Lothian, in my experience, going round all the wee towns and village, before West Lothian Council, to their shame, shut down the mobile libraries 11 years ago. The schools do teach it, and it is sporadic, but they no longer criticise children for having broad Scots accents. And in some ways, they lean into that and celebrate that when it comes to writing their own poems. And they're doing exactly what you're doing, Len. They're giving them Scots dictionaries. They're looking at Burns. But I did Burns competitions, and as many times I had to say to the teacher, what does that mean? What does that mean? What inflection do you have in that? Because I've no idea what that word is. But if you put a bit of effort into Burns, you get it back. I went to Drama College in London, in Sidcup. Lammaby Park, Sidcup, Rose Bruford College of Speech and Drama. And I had to do RP by my second year, and we had to read things in our best English. And I was criticised because I read a book about the sexual proclivities of the Nazis in Germany in the 1930s, and I read it in perfect RP, and it was my critique because me and a boy from Carluke, Brian McCarty, who was a brilliant actor, unfortunately passed away last year. You'll have seen him in loads of things, and he was the villain. He was a comedy. He was whatever, but he was always himself, and he was unabashedly Scots. He and I made an argument to say that when we're learning RP, we resist changing our mouths into these weird shapes and opening them up to make these weird vowels and consonants, because there's so much value in them. There's something heavy that doesn't sit very well with us when we hear it, because it's a voice that's been forced upon us, because when we were at school, we never celebrated Scots. We were told off. Our parents tell us off. Do you think, and this is my question, I'm sorry for going on so long, do you think, as a panel, as folk who are ambassadors for the Scots language, do you think that it's growing? Because personally, in my experience, I speak more Scots than my mum. I certainly speak more Scots than my granny. She was from Newtown St Boswell's, Galashiels, down that way. Didn't get me started on their form of Scots, yin, twa, three, flower. But do you think it's growing because of multiple fronts? We've got social media, we've got the fantastic poetry and the poems that have come, they've never been lost. There's always been a great poet putting stuff out there in their own language. Do you think it's grown? Is it social media? Is it schools encouraging? There's 2 times a year, I might want to correct somebody there earlier. It's not just January, there's also November, St Andrew's Day, has turned into a celebration of Scots generally. Do you think it's growing? And if it is growing, should we keep the gatekeepers at bay? Or do you see a sort of crystallisation, a standard Scots creeping in where we will agree a spelling? Is that contentious? I don't know,
The standardisation of Scots spelling would take about another 5 hours, which I don't think we can do. Do you want to respond, or?
Yes.
I can respond. Yeah.
On a census level, I mean, it is growing. You can see that it's massively growing. Keep in mind, I think the last census was 2011, so it better have been growing because we've been growing. But no, it's good to see, and I think there's so many things in what you said there that piqued my imagination, because I was born in Carluke, so that was one of them. But then the other one was, you might not even know you're doing this, but 3 years ago, like the instead of saying years, you say year, like 3 years ago. I thought that was great. So yeah, it's so nice to see it growing, and we will see it growing, and hopefully with the right investment, it will continue to grow. But I think what we need to do is not get complacent, because you said you've got the peaks and troughs of, and we're in a peak right now. I think instead of thinking at it as, there's always going to be peaks and troughs, we should look at it as a peak and go, right, let's peak for there, let's continue to peak. Because I think we can get complacent when we think, Scots is fine, it's thriving, that's good. Right, job done, let's go home. No, we need to continue. We need to see that peak as something to jump off onto more things and to keep going, rather than to get complacent and to see, it's fine, we don't need to do anything else in terms of investment, because it's the investment that we do now that will pay dividends in the future. you know, the Waynes that we invest in now for anything, whether it's Scots or whether it's anything else, they will be the people who are making the decisions when we're not here. So we need to make sure that instead of looking at it as a peak that's going to go to a trough, we think, that's a peak. So many peaks. Let's go mountain climbing.
I think that we probably, Talia, are we out of time? Talia's got a very regretful, yes, we're out of time. Thank you so much, folks. You've been a really brilliant audience. And thank you so much to our 3 writers, Chris, Len and Michael.
That was fun.
That was good. Yes, thank you so much, folks.